Oh, it is. Yes, it is.
Good afternoon. I would like to call this meeting of the Kentucky Board of Education to order. Welcome to our members and to all of those in the audience, those joining us virtually. We don't have any members participating virtually right now, but if you were to need to do so, please make sure that your video is streaming and that you can be seen throughout the meeting. Dr. Jones, please call the roll.
Holly Ludworth, Harold McKinney,
Here.
Justin Pate,
Here.
Julie Pyle. Here. Randy Poe,
Here.
Sharon Porter Robinson,
Here.
Lee Todd,
Here.
Steve Trimble,
Here.
Diane Woods, Lou Young,
Here.
Harper Blake,
Here.
Alfonso de Torres Nunez,
Here.
Secretary Jamie Link, and President Aaron Thompson. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you so much. Let's get right into our agenda. Included on today's agenda is a dedicated public comment segment. This segment is limited to 10 speakers at a maximum of 3 minutes each. If there are multiple members of an organization, we encourage the membership of that organization to select one person to represent the views. We do not have anyone signed up, so we'll now move on to internal board business. There are several action and discussion items in the internal board business agenda. First, we have the summary of minutes for the October 1, 2025 regular meeting, day 1, October 2, 2025 KBE regular meeting, day 2, and the November 25, 2025 KBE Awards Committee meeting. These minutes were distributed in advance. Are there any corrections or comments regarding those minutes? Hearing none, I would then ask the board to offer a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
So move. Steve will second. Thank you very much. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Thank you so much. The minutes stand approved. The next item is regarding the 2025 Kevin C. Brown Strategic Priority Award. So I call on Julie Powell, Chair of the KBE Awards Committee, to present this agenda item.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Kevin C. Brown served at the KDE in various roles from 2004 to 2018, including as the Interim Commissioner of Education from 2019 to September 2020. Brown's time at the department throughout 2020 was marked with significant challenges that called for strategic educational leadership and clear ongoing communication that was forward-thinking, action-oriented, and aimed at advancing efforts to educate, feed, and support Kentucky's 650,000 students during a global pandemic. The priority area for this award changes from year to year based on the desire of the board. The 2025 Kevin C. Brown Strategic Priority Award seeks to recognize a public school district that has demonstrated a strong commitment to developing and/or implementing a localized accountability system. As stated in the Local Accountability Design Guide and Toolkit released by the Kentucky Department of Ed in September 2020, well-designed and effectively implemented local accountability systems lead to transformed and vibrant learning student experiences, enhanced community engagement and partnership, and increased transparency with actionable data to inform educational improvements and decisions. On behalf of the Awards Committee, I would like to share that the committee met on Tuesday, November 25th, and determined that candidate 4 best met the criteria of the award. Therefore, I would like to move to approve of candidate 4 as the recipient of the 2025 Kevin C. Brown Strategic Award.
Thank you, Ms. Powell. This committee does such yeoman's work and such a service. Coming from the committee, this motion does not require a second. Therefore, I'll put the question. All those in favor of approving candidate 4 as the recipient of the 2025 Kevin C. Brown Strategic priority award, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Thank you so much. The motion carries. Our next item concerns the results from our KBE self-assessment. We sought the support of the National Association of State Boards of Education, and we're fortunate to have with us today President Paolo DeMera, who is the CEO of NASB, to help give us those results and facilitate our discussion. Please.
Madam Chair, it's an extremely wonderful pleasure for me to be with you all today. As you can imagine, as the president of the National Association of State Boards of Education, there's nothing I enjoy more than being with the State Board of Education as they convene and conduct their business. I had the great pleasure of sitting in on earlier today the High School Transformation Working Group, which is sort of maybe a creature of this board, but a creature of the state that is dealing with a project that is near and dear to NASB's heart. In fact, we initiated the network of 6 states that are working on high school transformation. So it was a pleasure to see that work manifesting itself in such a wonderful and powerful way. Truly, you all are doing some great things here in Kentucky. My purpose here today is to, we classify this. We have a number of services that we provide to our members, everything from support of strategic planning, supporting state board retreats and task forces. And one of the things we do is a board self-assessment. And I also always applaud boards for having the willingness to assess themselves. We all know that that kind of reflection internally, accompanies, is accompanied by a little bit of risk, maybe perhaps a little bit of anxiety of what is this going to show. But ultimately, it's founded in a sense of continuous improvement. And I love it when boards say to themselves and to each other, hey, we should take stock about where we are, how we work, how effective we are, and the extent to which maybe we can try to do a few things differently and better. And we should listen to each other and evaluate that. So that's what this process is all about. I already commend you because in the process of this, we've learned about some of the changes being made to the board schedule and some of those other things that really reflect that kind of reflection. People have articulated that, hey, we'd like to see more of this and less of that, and people are responding to that, and that's a beautiful thing in the high performing boards that we see across the country. It's that kind of responsiveness to member needs, member perspectives, member feedback that always makes for me is the mark of an effective board. Let's go to the next slide, and which is that graphic, and then go one more. One of the things I always do in a presentation like this is couch it in terms of team effectiveness. And we use this particular model. It's called the GRIPPY model. Some of you may be familiar with it, but it's built on this pyramid where there are these 4 elements: goals, roles, processes, and interpersonal relationships. And if you think back to any particular team experience you've been involved in, you can typically find the way that this graphic fits into that, right? It might have been a sports team. It might have been marching band. It might be your own family. It could be a business team that you serve on. The importance is that there's cohesiveness around the goals and visions of the organization, that people are clear on the different roles that they serve, and there's an understanding of what role each person plays. There are clearly defined processes for communicating, for decision-making, for dispute resolution, dispute management, and fundamental are the interpersonal relationships. A lot of times people hear interpersonal relationships and things like trust and mutual support, and I love the third piece, which is genuine friendliness. That doesn't mean you necessarily have to agree with everybody all the time, nor does it mean, you necessarily have to like each other, but you have to feel like you can work together, right? We see these sports teams all the time, and one can't help but wonder what are the collegialities, what are the tensions, what's the drama that might be happening behind the scenes. But at the end of the day, effective teams find ways to create strength out of those interpersonal relationships, do the things they need to do together in order to be successful. So what I'm going to do is the questions that we have asked as part of our survey are really clustered around these main areas. With the one additional exception is we have a set of stakeholder engagement questions, which seem very germane to the work of the board today, and we'll talk about those toward the end. So let's go to the next slide. And I want to say 2 things about this process. It is less important what I say about what I see, and more important about what you see in the numbers, right? What you see and what your thoughts are. And especially those of you who offered, and we really appreciate people who, respond to the open-ended questions about, we really do this well. I'd like to see us do more of that, because I think those are the nuggets of productive conversation that lead to the kinds of things that is really this question here. The reality is we're not going to resolve anything today, but we set in motion this concept of, okay, how effectively do we think the board is operating, and what are the kinds of things we can do as we proceed into 2026? And I really view those through two lenses. One is the lens of the board itself as a group, and the other is the lens of you all as individuals. And I'll make reference to that throughout my presentation, because a lot of the things that make for a more effective team is sometimes a self-reflection saying, hey, I know that I have this personality trait, and I know other people have different personality traits. I'm going to do what I can to engage more, or come to understand people's perspectives, or help drive connecting with other people that have an interest in the work of the board, or what have you. So I encourage you to keep tabs on your own perspective about yourself as a member of the board, and about the things that the board does itself, with ultimately a sense that I was just recently in Illinois, and they came away with a few things that they wanted to work on in the upcoming year. And it was like, not major things. It was like clarifying their protocol for dealing with the media, refining how their committee structure works, and the sequence of events around committees. Little things, but that ultimately came out of, respected and appropriate feedback from their various board members. Let's go to the next slide. So you're going to hear this divided into 4 parts. Our survey, you see the number of questions there. You see the general topics of the different areas, and I'm going to take you through those. I'll digress a little bit when we get to the roles discussion, just to talk about a couple other things that we have been looking at as we do roles analysis, but that should be pretty straightforward. And I would be remiss if I didn't say thank you to each and every one of you for responding. It's important with such a small n size, shall we say, to get good responses so that everybody's voice is reflected, and the varying perspectives that are represented here around the table are reflected. Let's go to the next slide. So we're going to start with goals. Again, go to the next slide. This set of questions is really about alignment to vision and mission. One of the things I've always commended, not only to my friends here in Kentucky, but to others around the country, is you really have a really nice strategic plan in the United We Work document. And again, anytime there is something like that, a defining document that's been created with great inclusivity, great stakeholder engagement, great collaboration, people ending that process, holding hands, saying, yes, we may not have gotten everything we want, but we like what's here. We believe it's a strong direction-setting thing for the state of Kentucky. Let's hold hands and move forward. It's a great place to build the kind of vision alignment that you want in a high-performing team around goals. And as you can see, this is, I look at these numbers and I think, oh, well, this is a group that has a clear sense of goals. Now, that doesn't mean it's without, opportunities for strengthening. And some of you may look at these numbers and say, yeah, I see a little bit of, variation in the strength of people's opinions about the different factors. Again, I'll leave it up to your own discussion and your own reflections to sort of further analyze. But again, it's a very strong characterization in general. Now, what I'll likely do is pause at the end of each of these segments just to see if there are any particular questions that people might have. Let me go to the next slide, which represents a little bit of our own processing. There were a number of open-ended questions, and even one of the questions that you just saw where the idea of the use of data is raised, right? Can we do more to use data? And even earlier today, in the context of the high school transformation, people were pointed to as being data wonks, and people who love data, and we see that more and more across the country, and we celebrate it. Because we value data and evidence. Data tells us, and we also recognize that some things defy really high quality data collection, although lots of people are working on improving data collection. But that idea of, are we using data both to inform our decision-making and then to gauge the progress that we make, the impact that we're having. What does that look like? And is it data that's presented in a way that's, disaggregated, that gives us nuanced views? In fact, lately I've been advocating for more outlier data analysis, because I always love to see, hey, this high school is beating the odds. It's got this, in this kind of community with this group of kids, but they're knocking it out of the park. What's going on there? Those kinds of data slices and dices can really be informative to the work of a board. And several of you raised issues about what data is available, what data is used, how it's used, and maybe even are there other data that we need to gather as we continue to drive our agenda forward. And that includes the workforce data in the interest of trying to align better what schools are doing in terms of developing students to the needs of the workforce, and so forth and so on. There were a couple of folks who talked about communications and the way information is communicated, top down, down top. And again, may be fruitful conversation. And it's really incumbent upon each of you, to the extent that you have particular opinions on those matters, to be more precise about what are those things that you find, that could be improvement opportunities, and conveying those to the chair and to others as part of the organization. So a couple of comments were made about aligning the work of the board to other state agencies, as well as, I've already mentioned the issue of data aggregation. One of the things, that I always remind people, especially when we talk about the roles, is the role of the board. It also sits in sort of the education ecosystem of the state, right? And you and I both know that that's very complex. The governor cares, the lieutenant governor cares. I was thrilled to see the lieutenant governor in attendance at the high school transformation work group. The legislature cares, the associations care, all the schools and their administrators and their treasurers and others care. The general public cares, the media cares, taxpayers care. All these people are different forces that engage in this beautiful sort of tapestry of education policy and practice that we value, and is so important to the prosperity of the Commonwealth and to the nation. And so understanding how you fit into that and your relation to the different pieces and parts of that infrastructure, which many times comes back to stakeholder engagement, but often goes beyond that, is also a key part of the end result of what you're trying to accomplish. So let me stop here. Why don't we go to the next graphic, and then I'll pause for any questions on this issue of goals and vision alignment.
So comments regarding these results relative to the goals, vision, alignment. I note in particular two matters that I would love to hear from board members regarding, and that is the degree to which we have identified, engaged, and do so in an intentional way, the various stakeholders who have something in the game, and therefore they deserve our intentional efforts to be involved, and the degree to which we need to do a better job of making visible, making transparent data associated with decisions. Now, we're going to talk a lot today about data regarding our results and evidence about the results of what we do, but we want to have the board be confident, and therefore have the public be confident, that we have consulted the appropriate data sets and the interlocking analyses and relevance of the data that are available, even to the point of identifying more data that is needed, that we are intentional about data. So I really hope that we have further discussion and illumination on that point, because that is the key to integrity. So we do not take it lightly, even though, it's a small percentage. We need to feel confident, and we need everybody to feel confident. So don't hold back.
When do they hold back?
Yeah, like I need to say that to this group. Further comments on this?
I do have one question for Paolo. That last bullet, state stakeholders understand and support board's mission and goals. I was one of the somewhat agree on that one, and I based my answer on the people that I talk to and hear from in terms of support for the board's mission and goals. But I understand that there's fault in that logic, in that probably a lot of the people who might not support the board's mission and goals
Don't
aren't
talk to
texting
you.
me,
Yeah.
right? So how do you, I mean, I feel like there's some notion here that we should be more intentional about public data gathering around the effectiveness of the board in that regard, perhaps. And I don't know what that looks like. And I don't know if there are states that do that well.
Madam Chair, Member Young, you raise a good point, because I think a lot of times boards struggle with just even public awareness. Generally, the closer people are to the education ecosystem, the more they understand the board. You've got people in attendance here or watching online. They kind of know what you do and how it impacts them. But the broader public, often it's obscure. In fact, many times when I introduce myself as the National Association of State Boards of Education, people think of their local school board.
Yeah.
They're likely to know their local school board more than they might the state board in terms of its responsibility. So in some ways, it's a constant kind of challenge to help people understand and make them aware of the work that the board does. Although it's really the work that's more important than necessarily the entity
Awareness
that does the board. So many board members and boards are very humble in terms of it's not about us; it's really about the work, right, and the students. I think it's one of those issues of more the key stakeholders and how much they understand and are in sync with the vision. A lot of that comes from the process of developing the vision and how people have been involved. Because I think even then, if people feel like their voices have been heard, or even if their voices have an opportunity to be heard in the day-to-day business of the board, that's valued. Even if things may not necessarily go in the way that every which is, you're always going to have those situations where not every stakeholder can be satisfied.
And coming on the heels of 3 or 4 years of Kentucky United, we learned where we did intentionally engage a broad set of stakeholders. I think I felt more confident in that answer, but I completely understand why two people said, I don't know.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
think it's a legitimate response.
Yes, yes.
Right, exactly. Randy?
Yeah, well, I would just add to that too, and I'm not sure what I responded on any of these actually. But but since you brought this up, I think some of that is that we support our mission and goals and we support communicating those. But who we're communicating to doesn't necessarily want that communication because they already have their mind made up on certain activities. That's the way I look at that, because you can't satisfy everybody, as you just said. So the question is are we doing an effective job of communicating our goals and visions to those stakeholders, like the legislature and the others? Some will be acceptable and some will not be. The commissioners went out there and done a great job this year communicating, but I'm sure you get a lot of questions from some of them on local accountability and whether they're there yet or not. So, that's the way I take that. So I don't really fault that as a weakness or something, because sometimes it's what the other person is viewing the receptor of that information.
Yes, I think that's fair. And again, Member Young, back to your
Because it's
question
that
about
support.
Yeah,
It's not understand, but support.
right, right, and in some ways a little bit two different things.
Right.
It may behoove you, and you may already do this from time to time, to survey your major stakeholders. I usually think of a state having anywhere from 30 to 40 different associations or whatever that have a more direct interest, and just asking them questions about, do you feel like you're getting the information, whether you support it or not? Do you feel like communications are there, openness to, having your points of view presented or heard, opportunity to engage with members or staff or what have you, that kind of information from them directly. My guess is they would appreciate having that opportunity to feedback on that.
Julie, yes.
I guess I'd also like to make the comment that it's really important for us to be out in the communities and in different areas, going to where they're at. Because I can't tell you how many times I've been on a committee or been on a planning session, and it's like people are trying to reinvent the wheel. And I'll be like, okay, we're already doing this at the state level. Let's get everybody on the same plane flying this thing. So like the other day, I'm on the planning committee for the talent pipeline for the Northern Kentucky leadership class, because I went through the class and I'm on the planning. And so when Secretary Link and Commissioner were talking about the SWOT analysis, I thought that's a good focus for that day. So then I connected that team with the Secretary's cabinet, so that way, everybody's kind of flying in the same direction, but it's also onerous on us to be out there spreading the word and sharing what the vision of the board is, our whole education system. Because being out there talking in other states, talk through our conferences and things, we're unique in that we do have a guiding light for the entire state. We just need to make sure everybody's following that light.
Yes, Alfonso.
And I would like to piggyback to what you just said, because it's not only about going where they are, but it's also speaking and reaching to them in their own language. In the last couple of months, I have been able to have conversations with people in their first language that, in their words, for the first time, they saw somebody that looked like them and sound like them, and they felt comfortable enough to approach. No matter how much we try to put communication out there, like Randy said, there are always going to be people that are going to disagree, and there are always going to be people that may have their own ideas. But being able to reach out to them in a way that they understand and in a way that they feel comfortable, it opens up the door to having a conversation, which is half already of the game. After that, we may disagree, we may not, we may agree, but you are never going to find that out until you create that situation in which they feel comfortable to bring up the issues that they care about. And like it happened with the interviews that we did many years ago in the Kentucky United We Learn Council, when you open up to those conversations, most of the times you find out things, especially you find out that they care. And it's just a matter of finding out how we can leverage each other, right? Me personally, speaking to this data, I can say that in my 5 months as a board member, because the direction was clear, the values were clear, the sense of purpose were clear, I have never experienced such a onboarding process in any organization as fast as this one. Mm-hmm. I have been able to articulate ideas from this board to different stakeholders in ways that I thought it was going to be more difficult. And Lou knows the many text messages that I have sent you about, am I saying this right? Or
Always
Cliftus
happy
also, or Todd, how many times I have reached out to you. But because that confidence is there, I have been able to state those ideas clearly. So if anything, that speaks to the health of this board. So thank you to you all.
It seems that we are pretty well aligned here. I do think it behooves us to keep in mind stakeholder engagement and the extent to which we are very transparent about data that upon which data that we are consulting, not necessarily in public, maybe in staff notes or giving us references that we can consult on our own. And I would say identifying data that it would be nice to have, because, I mean, we have a wealth. I've always contended we spend way more on data collection than we do on analysis. And so I would suspect there is a real treasure to be discovered among the data that we already have. That's just my personal view, but I appreciate the board considering this matter in such a thoughtful way. Paolo,
I will continue. Member Pyle gives me a good opportunity because she talked about a role that she plays, right? So let's go to the next slide. One of the things I always think about is situating a board itself as the board's role and then each member's role. And I often talk about it in terms of, and as you reflect on your own way of comporting yourself as a board member, there are the things you must do legally, right? You must do legally. And that could include, I'm not familiar with like the ethics laws of the state or what have you. There may be certain disclosures you have. Mm-hmm. There, you certainly have an obligation to attend meetings, to vote. I always say that you even have an obligation to help implement things that you might personally disagree with, right? Everybody knows that from time to time, those things come to your desk. And you may say, gee, I didn't like that law. I don't like the underlying purpose, but this board is charged with writing the regulations. And so I'm going to take that work seriously, all the while continuing perhaps not to agree with a particular policy. So, but then in addition to the things that you sort of must do and are required to do, then there are those things that you probably ought to do. And some of that goes back to Member Pyle's reference. How are you engaging with the education community, near where you are? How are you available to people who want to, weigh in with you on certain issues and what have you? Are you tuned into the departments and the board's protocols for, somebody calls you about an issue with a teacher that you know you shouldn't weigh in on, and you have to refer that to the right person to handle in the appropriate ways so you don't get crosswise with issues. And so there's that sort of, and then are you, if someone invites you to give a speech or someone invites you to attend an award ceremony or things like that, how do you create the conditions where you're, present in the community? And that could be the micro community or the larger community of the state with the business community or the social services sector or other governmental entities or what have you. So think about those things. And your own role and your understanding of it, and don't hesitate to talk to each other about the things that you're doing to either serve as examples or to help answer questions like, is it really appropriate for me, to do this thing or that thing? Because again, not only do you have each other to rely on, you have staff, especially, if there are issues of legality or appropriateness or what have you. You've got staff and the chair and others and the commissioner to advise you. One of the things I do reference, because not only is there the board's role and each member's sort of formal and official role, there's also, this idea of you as a person and how you present yourself in the context of the board's work. We've worked with two tools. Some of you are familiar with the Strengths Finder tool that Gallup does. They classify individuals into these four categories. Strategic thinking strengths, relationship building strengths, influencing strengths, and executing strengths. And we've done this exercise with a number of boards. It's always interesting to see who has the different, where their strengths are and how they interplay. And a lot of people both have better self-realization of how they operate in a setting like this. And then how others operate. The other tool that we use, we can go to the next slide, is the Enneagram. Some of you may be familiar with Enneagram. It's sort of less used maybe in the business circles as it is in others, but they have these nine sort of attribute centric areas. We did this with the District of Columbia board recently, and it was interesting, very interesting to find where people were in terms of their natural dispositions, what they had on their board, what they didn't have on their board, and how that sort of was kind of an aha for some people. But it not only sheds light on the various dynamics that may be taking place within a board, but it also helps people understand what are the gaps that ought to be. If you don't have somebody who may be the skeptic in the room, who can serve that role when it's necessary to be skeptical, or somebody who's more of a peacemaker. That was the interesting thing about the District of Columbia. They didn't really have a peacemaker, and sometimes you need that person to kind of be the one to kind of broker those middle grounds or what have you. And so it's a fascinating undertaking. Let's go to the numbers on this section of the. Let's go ahead into processes. I'll take that up because we'll hit the roles piece also in interpersonal relationships. So our processes questions, you can go to the next slide, are really designed around things like your meetings, your protocols, is there enough time? Are you getting agenda materials out, timely? And again, these are really strong numbers. I think there was also a number of people that made reference to the changes that are coming up for next year, where you're adding the virtual work sessions in between the regular meetings. Again, invariably, we see boards with, differences, meetings are too long, meetings are too short. We focus on the right things, we don't focus on the right things. But again, there's generally some, good cohesiveness in these areas. A couple places where there's uncertainty about process. I always encourage people, if you're really not sure about a process, ask Liptus Ann, ask the chair. Someone knows and will be able to answer your question to your satisfaction, so that you're not living unaware of, what the right protocols are. So again, I'll give you a chance to just process this data a little bit. I'll go to the next slide and give you a few takeaways. Someone made the comment about too much focus on technical issues and more time on adaptive issues. I love the reference to Ron Heifetz's work. I too am a big advocate for adaptive strategies rather than technical. I do though take the opportunity to point out to folks is that at the end of the day, the statutes charge you with some very technical things that you have to do. I see that, when I saw your agenda, I saw, well, here's the consent. That's what consent agendas are for. Some of the technical things that you trust the people who are actually doing the analysis, making the decisions. Occasionally you might pull one aside because you have some questions, but a lot of technical things. Sometimes you can convince the legislature to get you out of that, or charge others with just doing it and not necessarily cluttering the agenda with it. But by and large, there's always going to be a few things. But to your point, is emphasizing those opportunities to do more of the adaptive work. That's really the satisfying work. None of you are here to approve this waiver for something that you're totally fine with whatever district wanting to do whatever thing. You're here because you really want to dig into why what can we be doing to improve reading outcomes, or how can we better align what we're doing with the business community. Those kinds of things is where your passion are. So continuing to kind of find ways to make sure those are the places where you spend the most productive time, in spite of knowing that you're going to have to spend some time on the technical issues is important.
We really love a good easement.
Nothing like a good territory transfer, right? So a couple of the comments speak to that. Are we spending our board time really around improving instruction, improving outcomes for students, and so forth and so on? And it's good to continually ask yourself those questions and find ways to work on improving. And again, this is why sometimes board members feel like they're being asked to rubber stamp some things, because they are technical, although there are times when people also feel like they're rubber stamping things where decisions have been made in other settings and what have you. And again, to the chair's point about communications and transparency in the kinds of discussions that are being made. Again, those of you who feel as if that communication isn't happening, I would encourage you to be specific about when those things occur and make it clear that you're in this to be informed about the decisions that you're being asked to make. So again, let's go to the next graphic, but I'll stop here to see if there are any further reflections on any of the process-related issues. And I would encourage the process-related issues to get into other protocols. Again, dealing with the media, dealing with legislators, giving speeches, what have you. A lot of those issues come up in the course of the work that we've done, and so I want to make sure people feel free to think of processes in a broader context.
Maybe pop back 2 slides so that people can see the questions.
Yeah.
Sorry, Randy.
Yeah,
There you
Randy?
Well, you bring up a very good point there. I think, in some ways, we have too much communication because we're getting like 5 press releases a day. But I think the importance is that I don't have time to read 5 press releases a day. But then in the critical information coming out, example today, you had a high school transformation committee meeting. As a board, if I didn't read the press release, I would not have known such a critical meeting was taking place on that particular time. Or giving an example of that, I'm one of those 20 people watching online. There was this innovative guide that you were talking about. Would have liked to have seen that as a board member. Would have liked to see, if we're going to release a innovative guide and say this is our work to innovation, we'd like to see some input or direction on that innovative guide before it's released to the public, and reading it after the fact, just as an example of that.
That's
Because there's 2 things that I was seeing, innovative guide, and then there was another guide you talked about this morning. And I know we got those in a press release and said we could click on this. But to me, those 2 major things are just important as United We Learn work as a board. That if we're going to be releasing that to the community and saying, this is our guide for the transformation of high school work, I think we all, and maybe that's where we're going with our meeting in between meetings, that should be something we should discuss before, because we may or may not agree with that guide, but people will think we have approved that guide. I don't even know what's in there. I haven't seen it. But that's an example of this.
Well, I do think
What
that
I
the
think of.
notice issue is one that probably the board needs to be, those meetings that represent the continuation of agreed-upon initiatives like United We Learn, like the high school transformation, and so forth. It's like these groups are meeting, and that can be the extent of it. Alert to the board, these groups are meeting, this is the agenda. Now, in the process materials and so forth that they're using, and the process work that's going on, I think that we have to either get in, become a part of the group, or, stay up with it. But this is a group that is trying to develop a strategy for getting folks on board and so forth. So it's not a time when we're going to agree or disagree necessarily. This is a group, we've agreed to initiate this effort, is what I'm trying to say. So the materials that they are developing are materials that they're relying on, they're tools. They're tools that they're using to kind of stand up a strategy. And I was sorry I was on the road, and I can't do two things at once. So I was not intending to tune in, but I was so excited to know that you were meeting. And if there were other board members who didn't know, I wish they had known.
Well, I mean,
So,
it
and we can
highlights
do
the,
better. We can do something about
yeah,
that.
the miscommunication, like the Kentucky Innovation Guide is nothing we developed.
Right.
That's already out there.
Right, I think it was released back in 2024.
24.
Right.
So,
right.
which it actually points out a real challenge for any organization this size and this complexity. On any given day, there may be documents that have historical geneses that go back to and during onboarding, for new members, typically a major document like United We Learn, strategic plan is fundamental to that kind of onboarding process. But then it may not rise to the level of being factored into their process, and then people then stumble into, oh, I never knew that we had this other thing that maybe should or maybe not be part of an onboarding process. And so there's always that kind of challenge of what are those key documents or statements or guides or toolkits that govern a particular set of activities within the organization, that for which there should be wider understanding.
That's a great point, because like United We Learn document, we all became well versed in that before it was
That's
released.
ours, yeah.
And that's ours.
Yeah, yeah.
On these other particular documents that's going to go out, of something of innovation, and then there was a middle school guide that they said and things like that.
Career exploration.
Yeah, so to me, those are big things into our local accountability
Yeah.
moving forward. There's 85 committees going on, I realize that, we don't want all that. But when it's a major in relationship to United We Learned, I just think that was a great example of this. And like I said, I don't even know where I answered on these things right now, because this was a few weeks ago. But I think that I'm only commenting because it was a great example that you brought up. And to us, when people will say, you release today and you say, we're going to follow this innovative guide. I'm just using this as an example because it was a meeting today. Here's an innovative guide. And then you refer to, Commissioner, in our February meeting, we're going to talk about 2 and 3 points. You did the first one, and now we're going to talk about 2 and 3. Well, as a board, we might get asked, well, what is 2 and 3 coming back? Because if they didn't have the innovative guide, I just feel we should know what's in there, and that would be a good example of a briefing, at least, of a major document that's going to drive the accountability, because that's what I heard from you today, that this innovative guide is going to drive the innovation that districts are going to do moving forward in this transformation. Now, they can veer off that a little bit, but this is going to guide consistency and capacity building. And I guess that's just an example of wanting, as a board member, wanting to know that.
Point well taken. We will kind of
Yeah.
try to make sure that there is a way to alert board members of these, I'm going to say major milestones in these major initiatives. I mean, the high school transformation is a logical, important, and strategic effort to extend the grassroots engagement strategy to get broad support behind being more ambitious about making sure our high schools are serving as the platform for future of our students. I mean, it is as important as it gets. And we're as dedicated to that and emboldened by this opportunity as United We Learn has taught us to be. And I just want the board to know we take that point very seriously. I think that we are really going to make sure we all have a chance to be on board to the extent that we can, because everybody on this board has at least one other job. At least. And I am always impressed, amazed, and thankful for the extent of the contribution our members are making, because they do pay attention. And we're going to give everybody a chance to attend to those things that are close to you, that you're passionate about, that you want to contribute to. If we didn't do that, we would not be taking we wouldn't be paying respect for the talent that exists on the board, and I think the willingness to contribute. So we're not going to let that happen. Thank you, Randy. Julie.
So I have a question. Can things like the High School Transformation Network, the Cool Council things, go on that calendar that we have access to?
Yes.
Like the big important, not every single committee
Right.
meeting, but the big important ones?
Yeah.
Because like Karen knows, like I'm all in on the United We Learn. I was on the original committee on that. But I have to go through and search through documents to find when the dates are for the
Yeah,
convenings to put them
right.
on my calendar. So if there can be a place, at least the big ones, because I know I pestered Lipton a couple times because I kept losing the link for the calendar. But if we could have a central place for that, to me, that would be helpful.
We can do better about that. I mean, I need a lot of help with calendar stuff too, and so I really appreciate that point.
I also understand Randy's point. I'm not misunderstanding when I say we do have a whole set of colored innovation guides that Taylor can share with you guys today if you haven't seen them. So I know that you're using that just as an example, but it really is a great guide, and we can get those to you guys today.
Point well taken.
Why don't we go to the next section?
Yes.
Although I do want to say that the last question on this list, the board is served well by the SEA. It's really nice to see such really strong numbers on that, because again, it's just reflective of the great team that you have at the SEA and the great working relationship between the board and the SEA. So this last element is interpersonal relationships. We ask a small number of questions about collegiality. We can go to the next slide and just take a quick look at those. One of the things I always say about interpersonal relationships is I always ask members to just look around the room at each individual who sits, with you as a fellow board member, and just ask yourself, how well do I know this person? How well do I know this person? It's that idea of genuine friendliness. When I was the state superintendent in Ohio, I had members who were farmers. And we would engage about the weather and about crops and about commodity prices. Somebody who's a business person, I'd say, how's it going? Are sales looking good? What's your Christmas season looking like? People who were, engaged in education pursuits or what have you, I would always find ways to connect, because again, it does two things. One is reinforces that you've got a broad perspective of, good, people who care about the quality of the schools in the Commonwealth, and who come with an interest of ensuring that every student gets a great education each and every day. And yet they come with, many different, perspectives, histories, circumstances, and what have you. And it is worth your while to identify them in ways beyond the fact that they sit with you at this table every other month. So I encourage you to do that because it then supports the kind of collegiality, consensus building, and civil discourse that you want to have in the context of a state board of education meeting or the work of the board. Let's go to the next slide that has the numbers. Again, these are really strong. And again, this is, sort of the things that you want to see, that you have effective collaboration, that you can reach consensus, that there's, a sense of, nonpartisan approaches to the work of the board, that you're able to make decisions effectively, and that you individually feel like you can engage in conversations and discussions. It's really that last point that probably, has, a little slightly weaker sense. And again, I always, it's hard to dissuade people if you feel sort of intimidated, but the sense I've gotten from those of you that I've interacted with and the other times where I've seen this board work is that people generally are not, hesitant. And I would encourage you to make yourself known, make yourself heard, make yourself understood, and without fear of retribution or anything else like that. So let's go to the next slide. I think there might be a couple of takeaways around here. There were many open-ended comments that were very complimentary of the board, the culture of the board. In Illinois, we talked about the vibe of the board and what have you. So again, here sometimes surface these issues about the nature of the discussions of the board and the meeting structures. And to the bullet under the key takeaways, deeper discussion. And again, I hope, I think that will manifest itself as you guys proceed into this new way of having some deeper dives and discussions in these alternating monthly or every other month virtual meetings that you're going to be having. So again, why don't we go ahead and do the stakeholder slides, which I think are next. And we've done a good bit of talking about stakeholders, but this is one of those where like the strongly agree is a little bit weaker. Overall, the agree column is pretty good, but we already have had a pretty decent discussion about continuing to and I would describe that you all do a really good job in terms of stakeholder engagement. There's always room for improvement, especially the comments that's often surface about people who aren't well represented, that you don't see, right? You know who you see. And it's always a little bit more challenging to figure out whose voice do you want that isn't in and of itself surfacing. I also salute you for your focus on student voice, because again, I often hold up Kentucky as an exemplar in terms of student voice in decision making, in participation, and bringing that voice to the table in terms of state education policy making. So I salute you for that. Again, let's go to the next slide for any other key takeaways coming from the open-ended. I think I've covered most of these things. Are there any barriers? How do you access those that may not be the most present, or maybe even know that you're open to their opinions and ideas, and what have you? And so I'll leave it at that. Again, we can stop here to talk about anything on the interpersonal relationships or the stakeholder side.
So I'm going to ask the board to consider the next few minutes focused on what is your impression of what we need to do, what we should focus on, where what you see as priorities as we go forward, what can we change? And then the second question I want you to consider is how frequently we need to collect information of our own perspective about how we're doing as a part of our continuous improvement and accountability effort. So you've seen the data, you've had a chance to kind of have it be presented in a formal, organized fashion. Now let's put it all together and begin with your impressions and what needs to happen next.
May I make a
Yes. Oh, please.
comment? I do want to just make one comment. And on one of the previous slides, it was talking about the board is well served by the SEA. So I want to stop and also thank the department. Our department here, I think, does a great job of trying to be customer service and also serving our board. And also too, I want to thank the board for recognizing that in the survey, that our board and works well, not only with the commissioner, but also with the members of the department here. So I want to take the opportunity, first of all, to thank our department for the work that they do, for the service that they provide, for the information that they give, and just for being available, the availability that they have. But also I want to thank the board for recognizing the department too in this survey. So thank you for that.
Well, sir. Well, we are, sir. Well, sir. Justin.
I think in totality, thinking about even some of the pathways that we were taking this morning to level set, to take time to level set with that committee, it'd be a good chance for us to level set and really talk about priorities. And then, what resources are we going to use as we explore those priorities? Because I really like having something for our committee to center on. And that may serve us well moving into the future and becoming a little more strategically focused. But then also, something that occurs to me, we're asking all of our local districts to look at more workforce data and let business and industry drive some of their, not just curriculum, but assessment metrics. Yet we don't look at workforce data. We still haven't really taken a look at what are the requirements for the major sectors in the Commonwealth's, in a job market. So I think that's all opportunities for us to think about collecting data on the input level from our Commonwealth and from our business and industry stakeholders as we are making decisions about things like going back to the SAT. How many jobs in Kentucky require an educational program that would even require a student to take the SAT? So I think all of that information is important for us as we are making policy decisions about things so that we can strategically spend the time on those areas that have the most impact. Just again, as more grounding input data driven for us. So again, level setting on what kind of questions are we asking? What are those true strategic priorities, and what are we using to inform us as a board collectively as we are having conversations and making decisions and taking votes on things that would impact those priorities? No, I said a lot.
Yeah, you did. That said a lot, and I appreciate your bringing us back to kind of like core mission. What are we really being intentional and specific regarding what we really care about? Now, I point out, we are going to be looking at our management goals and strategic goals and measurability and all of that. We're going to come back to some of these same questions. And I do think it's an interesting time to kind of pause and be reflective so we can be intentional, as we've got one major initiative that is continuing at a very important milestone, and at the same time we're bringing forward yet another effort that is in fact also systemic, and they are interrelated, and we do want to make sure we're keeping it all in mind, and we have some confidence that we have the capacity to keep it in mind. So we'll be having some other discussions that kind of give us a chance to recognize the scaffolding that is required to maintain efforts of this nature. Brought to us through the assistance of the department and in support of the board's ambitions. Do we have the right ambitions, Lee?
Yeah, I think keep our eye on what is the goal we're trying to do to with our students. And I think when I looked at the last test scores we had, and I noticed in the response to the CT academic proficiency in science, math, and they lead into the comment that the school year achieved proficiency in the challenging state academic standards. But they're just the state academic standards. They may be challenging, but you don't need to say, they're not too challenging. And when we saw the science data, and you can hear me say this before, I really think somebody ought to dig into where are those 6% of the kids who did grade high in science? And why did they grade high and everybody else grade low? So I think it's a dive into what are we trying to achieve? We're trying to achieve people to be in the present day workforce, and they're down that level. What can we do to assess that and see what the need is? I'm not totally I don't think we should educate students to say you do this and you get this job. I think you got to educate them to be survivors in the workplace, have the skills it needs to be to live a good life, and then give them the things that they need. But I am concerned somewhat with some of the things we're doing is that we're targeting these kids too tightly to say, you go through this advanced technology center, you'll be able to get a job like that. I'm not sure that's the case. So there's some discussion, I think, to try to look at what we're doing and what is happening. And I'll say more about that in a few minutes. You got another thought?
Yeah, I do think that there's a craving for more understanding of the impact evidence and more discussion of that. Other comments? Harold, did you?
Better to be silent and thoughtful than open my mouth and remove all doubt.
Hardly.
You might just advance one more slide. I think Paulo had a note here about some big strokes of takeaways there. And I'm listening through this desire for more data, and I appreciate it so much. And I do think we have a drinking from a fire hose data experience in education today, but we also have more tools than ever before to make sense of those data. So for me, I think the larger question for us as a board is to think about how we need to be more disciplined in our inquiry, how we can really get clear about the questions that we are asking and answering, because we can chase every line, every set of data that comes out to us, and many of those should be chased, absolutely. But I think we need to be really clear about the lines of inquiry as we move forward. So that may be a way that we frame this question, and then think about how we use those additional virtual meeting dates to really go deep. And that's what one of my takeaways from the criticism is, that we're trying to do so much in the drinking from the fire hose that we are too shallow in the way we spend our time around important issues, which leaves people feeling dissatisfied with the depth of discussion. But we can't, we would be here a week at a time if we dove into every one of the questions as deeply as perhaps an individual member might want to dive. So that's a leadership challenge for us to think about moving forward. And I feel really confident to say, based on the conversations that Sharon and I have had over text and over phone calls, that we see opportunities in the assessment report, in the APA report, in our ongoing conversations with the commissioner and the board team about how we can absolutely impact these measures.
Randy?
Yeah, you brought up a good question that I've asked in the past, and I guess that's where I think the communication from the disconnect of some on the board, I'll just speak for myself, is that you two, for example, the board chair, and which you should, you have more communication with the commissioner, but we as the rest of the board never know what that communication is or what is coming from those. So like, for example, I'm sure you discussed the upcoming committee and like the innovation, the rest.
High school transformation?
Yeah, that or whatever else you may have on your agenda, but the rest of us do not know what those are. So that's where the individual questions come in.
Now, we have been adding a synopsis of those meetings to your weekly notes from the commissioner. Just as a
Okay,
reminder, that's
exactly
new
where,
based
I
on.
guess.
Yeah.
I see, that's what I'm saying. We have sometimes too much
Too much,
communication. That's coming out as something different. That's not coming out as a synopsis of board members to board members. That's coming out as a synopsis from the commissioner
Correct.
to us. I'm saying from board to board members. That's where, I'm taking the commissioner out of that. I'm saying the communication amongst us is where I think some communication is
that's a
lacking.
good
What are
takeaway.
the important items that you're discussing? I don't know if I should be calling you and saying, Lou, I've got this burning question. You need to discuss this with the commissioner, or do you have your own agendas? I don't know what those meetings are. I've been sitting here for 4 years, and I really don't know what those meetings are about.
So when you brought that up in June, that's when we added it to the commissioner's note, but it now occurs to me that we might have missed the point that this could be a message from Sharon and me.
Right.
To board members. We just added the synopsis, but it didn't come from Sharon. It came from the commissioner. So,
Right.
yeah, I mean, I think that's
Because it's the
that's an easy
viewpoint
fix, yeah.
of you, not the
Yeah.
viewpoint of the commissioner, is what
Yeah,
I'm looking
yeah.
at.
Right. And Steve?
You know, sometimes we all tend to always look at the negative part of things, and I guess
Yeah.
that's trying to make ourselves better. But if we look at this, 35 questions were asked, and 34 out of the 35 fell between 80 and 100% of agree about our board members and things. And very few had, you know, we had 2 that had 18.2 that was totally disagreed with it, so, which is technically 2 people. And so I think looking at the positive side of it, we got an excellent board. And I think that we get along great, and I think we got good leadership guiding our board. You're the chairperson, vice chair people, and I think with Robbie's weekly updates and things like that, it keeps me informed. You know, we are to take care of the general things, not the daily running of the State Department of Education. So, but I feel like, well, in all, this has really been a positive
Yeah.
thing here. Not the negative.
I appreciate that balance. I think that's helpful.
How often should we do something as formal as this? We can think about that. I'm not asking for a decision today. We'll bring it back as we're thinking about our other board development processes, and I'll ask you to absolutely make a decision in August when we focus on further board development. But I want to add my thanks for your participation in the process and for kind of being so engaging in the deliberations, further deliberations on these results. Thank NASB for the excellent support in helping us collect this information and analyzing our responses so that we can consider them in not just one framework, but several frameworks of perspectives as we determine our next steps. So, Paulo, thank you so much. As always, we appreciate our NASB membership. It is paying dividends in many, many ways, and recognize a new member of your board.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Lou Young is a new
Yes.
member of your board.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to be with you today. It's just a thrill. Keep up the great work. We hold up Kentucky in many different ways for the great work that you all are doing, including the great, sort of vibe that you have as a board. So I continue to wish you the best, and we're always here should you ever need our services.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Chair Robinson, for new members, I might add, just in terms of that frequency question, as you think about it, this is the second board self-assessment we've done in 6 years. So that's where we've been heretofore. And you may recall that in the auditor's report, they did ping us for not conducting regular self-assessment. So something to think about as we perhaps codify that into policy.
Thank you so much. Before we move to the next agenda item, I'm going to ask the board's indulgence to round back and provide yet one more opportunity for public comment. We have 2 representatives here, Brandy Dunk, is that right? And Olivia Tipton. Ms. Dunk comes here to present regarding bullying issues, and Ms. Tipton is going to address equity issues. I'd like for you both to come to the table, and we would receive your public comments. And thank you for making an effort to be here. I don't even feel any apology is due that you were not able to be here at the opening of our meeting, but we're happy that you're here safe and sound and ready to share with us at this moment. So, Ms. Dunk, Brandy Dunk? I think it's on.
It's on.
If you just start talking.
Thank you. Before I get started, since I do have your all's attention, I wanted to take a moment to give kudos to Mickey Ray with KDE. My daughter started going to Frankfurt when she was 8. She passed her first law when she was 12. And she deals usually with child abuse. But she has dyslexia, and she felt she was adversely affected by the literacy program she had. And at that time, the Read to Succeed Act had already passed. Well, Mickey Ray was willing to meet with her and talk to her, and they came up with a one-word change to kind of require all the districts in the state to change literacy for K through 3. And they were able to get that passed, I think in 2022. But sometimes adults don't take kids seriously. So for Mickey to meet with a 14-year-old and work with her on it, and that was just great. And even now, like if I have questions, she's always been very accessible. So I just want to take a moment really quick to give her kudos. Okay. So I think the best way to kind of sum up what I wanted to present to you today is I was just going to read you an email that I sent my superintendent for my school district about the issues that were going on. So, dear Superintendent, I am reaching out in hopes of attaining some assistance with matters occurring within Oldham County Schools. I have been unsuccessfully trying to address this at a campus level. I will include an abbreviated account of those incidents and believe it will illustrate where I am needing assistance. I have multiple children in the district, and the responses have been drastically different, which has driven my larger concern and the cause for this email. My older daughter, Kira, is a junior at North. Kira suffers from several disabilities and has federal protections as such. She is a wonderful kid and a perfect example of a kid who leaned into her disabilities to accomplish great things. She is a powerful advocate, and I believe she has represented Oldham County Schools well in her legislative work for the state of Kentucky. If you Google her, you can see some of those accomplishments. Her disabilities are both visible and invisible. Her speech and dyslexia are more visible and related to the current issues. Starting last year during track, 2 fellow students began publicly making fun of her speech. While it began sporadically, the frequency and severity have significantly increased during cross-country this year. On October 3rd, the cross-country team traveled to Alabama for a meet, and the bullying escalated significantly during that trip to a level that warranted intervention. Kira was trying to sleep on the bus, and one of the children repeatedly poked and touched her to wake her up and asked her to play a game with them. While she initially denied the request, the behavior continued until Kira relented and downloaded the game. The game was a meme game where you create memes for other users to rate. It turns out Kira was woken up to join the game, so she was able to view memes being made to make fun of her disabilities. The memes she was forced to view were horrendous and reached the level of cruelty I struggle to describe. The incident was reported to the athletic director, coach, counselor, and principal. My current issue is that this is not being addressed according to school board policy, and the response does not seem appropriate in relation to the severity. No child should feel emotionally unsafe at school. This is compounded because Kira is already facing so much more than your average kid due to her disabilities, and I feel like the adults in this situation have failed her. I know I do not need to highlight this, but children kill themselves over issues like this, which makes the district's minimal response so much more concerning. It was communicated to me that the perpetrating students received a, quote, stern talking to address the situation, which seems grossly insufficient and again doesn't follow policy. I expressed dissatisfaction and tried to follow up further, but have not received a response. The other situation involves my 7th grade daughter, Lily, who attends OCMS. She's a very athletic kid and is a multi-sport athlete. Currently, there is no policy that I am aware of addressing children who are part of more than one sport. She is currently in wrestling and basketball for the middle school, and due to sheer logistics, some practices are missed due to attending the other sport. Until now, I have not been made aware this was an issue. She has had 2 basketball games this year in which she was benched the entire game. Most recently, this happened last Thursday. I made a Facebook post on my personal page about feeling sad for her. I did not address the coaching, name the organization I was referencing, or mention any single person by name. Later that same evening, the coach sent an email to me and copied the athletic director and principal. Her email grossly mischaracterized my post as an attack on the coaches and even alleged that I brought other kids into my rant. I was informed that I broke the parent conduct policy, and the coach planned to follow up with admin the following day about my actions. I asked for clarification as to how I broke the policy because the one available online does not indicate I violated any portion of the policy, and again have not received a response. Following the next practice, my daughter was held after practice, and she felt like she was told she had to pick only one sport, and even asked on the spot for her choice. It was also communicated that her choice would impact her playing time, which placed an inappropriate amount of pressure for her to select basketball due to fear of consequence. The entire response does not seem appropriate or follow any policy available. In September, this same basketball coach directed a biracial player to, quote, "Get up, monkey." I'm unaware to what degree this was reported or addressed, since my only involvement was due to my daughter asking what it meant following practice, but it is relevant to the nature of how things are being addressed. The other coach did address what was said as inappropriate at a following practice, but told players they still needed to respect the coach.
Excuse me, Ms. Dunk,
Yeah.
let me just, you're in the, I'm really sorry that you are here with sharing an incredibly important incident with us. I do want to respect the guidelines that we have for public comment, and I also want to respect the fact that you bring to us an issue that needs to be addressed. So I am going to assure you, I'm asking the commissioner to have the appropriate team member
Okay.
engage with you and address this issue in an appropriate way. I do want to make sure that you understand by interrupting you, it is not to give short shrift to the issue, but to assure you that it's going to be addressed in a way that respects all the appropriate procedures and rights of everybody involved. And I want to thank you sincerely for bringing to our attention a reality of everyday life for too many students, because we have yet to find a consistent way to assure that every student has the opportunity to experience school without the threat, the stress,
Yes.
and trauma of bullying.
Yeah.
So thank you for taking the time to come to us, and we will engage with you further. Commissioner?
Since you're comfortable with Miss Mickey Ray, if
Yes.
Mickey Ray could, if you wouldn't mind, Miss Marinelli, to take some more information so we can get back with her and follow up, please, if you don't mind also. If you wouldn't mind, I think Miss Marinelli would be great to take all the information. We can get back to you, get the appropriate people in contact with you.
That would be wonderful.
Thank you so
I
much.
appreciate that. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Ms. Tipton?
Okay, I'm going to attempt to address maybe some overlapping issues, but on a much higher level, not detailed in that matter. The reason why I felt like it was appropriate to speak here is because when I was looking at the 25-26 goals for you guys, the very first sentence on there was that you are dedicated to ensuring equal access, opportunities, and advancement for every student. Listening to your conversations here previously, I think it was a privilege given what you just said on how frequently that happens. The conversation that just took place amongst board members has left a very large impression, and that was impressive. I like to just acknowledge that it's very comforting to know that we have people who genuinely care about our students here working for them. So I thank you for that. It is the every student that brings me here today. And oftentimes it's those smaller groups of people that get impact that get twice as hard. And to kind of echo what I think was starting over here was one of the biggest struggles as parents is that it's a very hard to actually address some of these issues, and there's a lot of roadblocks. For instance, every single person I've spoken to at KDE has been incredibly polite and wonderful, and they all return emails, which is actually quite the compliment. But with that, I have received a lot of like, well, we can't really help with that, or we don't have the authority to enforce that. And so what it has created is kind of a round robin for people for reporting. And the end result is really that you can't get correction without having the resources for an attorney. And what I mean by that is, you know, on a high level, I've reported discrimination to students with disabilities and made multiple attempts. And not only did the retaliation starting, which, you know, included even my daughter's personal information being leaked publicly and violating her FERPA rights, but I also tried to address the SBDM councils, and I think that is something that would be relevant to you guys because the decision that I am talking about originated in the SBDM council. I ultimately hired a advocate who is a prior superintendent in Kentucky, and his doctorate dissertation was in SBDM councils to help me, and even he has been unsuccessful getting help. And after being told repeatedly nothing is wrong, I ended up filing open meetings violations, to which the district attorneys responded saying, yes, all 120 of those that you filed is founded. 120 is a rough estimate. I was just trying to show that we are just completely in violation of what was happening. And my point here today is not to drag the district, because quite frankly, they are doing incredible things up there. And I don't want that to discount from what's happening. What I'm asking for help with, or things to consider as you guys move forward, is to help point out some of these gaps. Because when we have a situation that we are just, like when the intention at SBDM councils is not being implemented and it's not, you know, going from there, when you go to all the different agencies that should be responsive, there's not really anything to be done. And the remaining one would be EPSB. But EPSB, one, you cannot file anonymously, which when given the amount of retaliation happening, that's a real serious concern. And then two, you have to file on educators individually. So you have to file those each in. And so like under my circumstances, I've got, I mean, a significant amount of evidence, and it impacts multiple teachers, right? And prior to getting that high, we had already gone all the way up the chain. So the number of people involved, it's really hard to tackle. So people are leaving the district left and right because of this that's happening. And again, many are now turning to things like open records, which is, and this is also relevant to you guys because we're not getting access to our children's educational records. And if you ask for them, and the result of that was they publicly shared my child's information, and they've done it multiple times. And there's no recourse, and the Attorney General has declined to address that.
So again, Ms. Tipton, this is yet another of the stories of somebody's reality, a child, a precious child. So we don't take it lightly, and we take very seriously you're presenting us with a real view of the reality of the constant struggle for equity and access for some kids. And the struggle is there for lots of kids. Those stories and scenarios may be different, but the impact is the same. Frustration of the student in the midst of denial of opportunity that we know should be available to them. So again, I'm going to ask the commissioner to identify the appropriate folks to engage with you in further understanding of a way to help in the midst of what is a reality for all of us. And something so precious is something that we have to be willing to fight for in every way that we can, and we're with you in the fight. Thank you for coming.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
I'm not going to comment on your specific case, but I hear you, and I don't disagree with you about how you feel as a parent getting a runaround. Because I'm a former superintendent, and I felt the same way when I was a superintendent of trying to help individuals like yourself or others. So I just want to say that you did, to me sitting here, you did move me. And I do agree, and I'm sure that when the commissioner talks and different things, they'll say it's this or they can't do anything. And that is a gap, and that is a frustration. So hopefully, within your gaps, that we can hopefully change some legislation, because I know that you're going to get some answers, because I've been there and I've fought for a change for 7 years in SBDM law as a superintendent, because I could not overcome an SBDM decision that I didn't like as superintendent on behalf of parents, but I didn't have that choice. So I understand so realize that if you get that response, it's frustrating to us too, the legislative process. But I'm hoping that they can help get rid of some of these gaps, because I share your pain.
Thank you again for coming. Yes, Steve,
I'd just
did
like
you?
to say, I appreciate the attitude that she came with this. I mean, wasn't aggressive, wasn't threatening, very, I
Right.
appreciate that you can get more done by doing that way than you can the other way, but I appreciate the way you can.
Thank you.
Yes.
And I think a person that we can have, we'll get started with, is Dr. Tucker, if you wouldn't mind also to meet with Ms. Dunk and Miss
Tipton, yep.
Miss
No,
Tipton.
that's okay, no problem.
Dr. Tucker will talk with you, and we'll try to get in contact. This may be a Greta Hilton issue, Dr. Hilton, but we'll get the information and then follow up, okay? And again, as always, I appreciate you pointing out the fact that this board's always been focused about access for students and making sure that students have opportunity. So we want to make sure that that's also from the board, from the school district side too, that they have the opportunity to take care of this if they haven't, of course, obviously they haven't already. So Dr. Tucker, if you wouldn't mind, Dr. Tucker's behind you and Miss Marinelli's behind you. We'll connect you with those people and we'll try to take care of it from there, okay?
Thank you guys for listening, and thanks for all that you do. It's impressive. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Poe, I'm going to ask you that when we, you and Steve, tomorrow when we get to board sharing, would you raise the issue of our revisiting at some point the SBDM law? And, I mean, it was, at one point, it was the answer to a problem.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, hey, I was there, I was in the room when it happened. And it was, we celebrated it. But we haven't, I'm not sure if we've looked at it in these times to make sure what it was designed to do in the first place is in fact now being done. And what changes need to be made in order to return it to being a useful tool in the interest of quality education at that school. So please, let's, let's not drop it. Board members, we have a very important opportunity now to consider moving closer to a goal that we had regarding our own accountability. I'm going to ask our Chief Performance Officer, Karen Dodd, and our Strategic Plan Program Manager, Susan Strange, to come forward and begin. Karen, thank you. I want to begin by thanking you on just not giving up on us and bringing back some opportunity for us to consider greater measurability, thereby accountability, or at least awareness of how we're doing, and other tools that help us help us be confident we're working on what we've pledged to do. So thank you so much.
Of course. All right, we can go to the first slide. So what you see here is I wanted to provide for you all this alignment. So as we were looking at your goals and how to make them measurable, we were also looking at your legislative priorities, the commissioner's goals, and the department's goals. And so we wanted to make sure that what we gave you would line everything up in a way that makes sense. So what you see here, the first two goals at the very top, yours that are in green and blue, we've got a couple of word changes from what you originally had. And I'm going to walk through each of these, but I wanted to make you aware that by making some of these changes that I'm going to recommend, it lines things up beautifully. And I hope that you'll see that. Let's go to the next page. So the first change is in your goal number 1, you had foster vibrant student learning experiences. You had innovation as part of your second goal, and we're recommending that you move that educational innovation to this goal, making it foster educational innovation through vibrant learning experiences. By doing this, your first sub-bullet under here still fits, and then we've moved a couple of the other sub-bullets from goal 2 up to this goal. So let me start in blue. We have the measurable or the SMART goal around this, which would be KBE will advocate to support Kentucky teachers in elevating vibrant learning experiences through the adoption of a new assessment and accountability model by spring 2026 as measured by the passage of legislation. So that's your big goal. Then the sub-bullets under that, the first one, as I said, is what you already had under there, support educators to design and implement engaging, real-world and content-rich learning experiences that inspire students to participate actively and apply their knowledge meaningfully. And then anything that you see and highlighted is what we've added as the measures. So this would be as evidenced by the adoption of vibrant learning as a required element of the new assessment and accountability system. As I said, the next 3 were brought up from the sub-bullets that you had under goal 2. But because we moved innovation to goal number 1, we feel like these fit here. So supporting the development and implementation of an accountability system that values innovative teaching practices and a vibrant learning environment aligned with community values, as evidenced by the adoption of local accountability as a required element of the new assessment and accountability system. So we're hitting on vibrant learning. Now we're hitting on the local accountability. Then promote continuous improvement through community-based accountability measures, ensuring that all students have equitable access to high-quality education, as evidenced by the adoption of the new assessment and accountability system, so the overall system. And then finally, explore opportunities for high school transformation across the Commonwealth aligned with workforce development. And this one is evidenced by the high school transformation quarterly meetings and incorporation of high school transformation in the next phase of the Kentucky United We Learn mission. All right. Moving on.
Do you want any questions or just
Yeah, how do you want to
information?
handle, yeah?
Yeah.
Do you want to do them by goal or at the end?
Let's do it at the end so that you can see how it all unfolds, because some of your questions may be answered. So the second one, this is where we have taken innovation out of here. And because we moved 3 of your sub-bullets up, that leaves this goal really focusing continuous improvement for professional improvement. The SMART goal would be for KBE will advance educational excellence through continuous professional improvement to build a highly skilled, well-supported educator workforce as measured by Kentucky Summative Assessment results in 3rd grade reading and mathematics. Now, after I submitted this, I would actually like to make one change to this, and that would be instead of focusing on 3rd grade, change this to the elementary band. That is something that Mickey Marinelli and I had just recently talked about changing within KDE's plan, because even though we're focused on 3rd grade, the results of that will really come into play in the 4th and 5th grade, and that's where we'll really start to see those results.
Right.
So I would like to change that if you are good with that. And then your sub-bullet, the one that stays, advance statewide efforts to support educators in the implementation of high-quality literacy and numeracy instruction aligned to high-quality instructional resources, as evidenced by advocating for funding to sustain and expand numeracy and reading academies. And then finally, your last goal, there was no change in the wording that you originally had, which is cultivate collaborative partnerships. The SMART goal would be for KBE, KBE will cultivate collaborative partnerships to enhance educational outcomes and enrich the educational environment for all students as measured by the passage of policies and regulations prioritized by the board. Your first bullet point stays the same, to establish and sustain strong partnerships with all educational stakeholders, including families, policymakers, and community members, as evidenced by collaboration between the high school transformation work group and the Kentucky United We Learn Council, as well as visits to schools and special education events. And then your sub-bullets under that remained the same. We made no changes there. And then your last bullet point, this was brought down from the first goal because we felt that it really did focus in on the partnerships. So that is to strengthen the educator workforce through enhanced collaboration with the Education Professional Standards Board and Kentucky's Council on Post-Secondary Education. Prioritize the recruitment, retention, and diversification of the educator workforce to enrich the teaching and learning experience and the educational environment for all students. Collaboration with EPSB will include cross-board participation as evidenced by each chair presenting reports to the other board and the proposed KPSB KBE Research Practice Collaborative. The CPE collaboration will be evidenced through the work of the Commonwealth Education Continuum. Okay. Questions, comments?
Comments, questions?
Okay, I just have a question. I guess it goes back to our first priority goal. You know, just like this morning, I was hearing from the group and not criticizing anything of the group, but just information from the group this morning. In all this work in education through vibrant learning experiences, why are we, I know we've got a NASB grant or whatever, but why are we calling it, you know, development as evidenced by the high school transformation? We need transformation K-12 for high school to work, okay? So even in the group this morning, I heard about middle school. Dealing in Northern Kentucky, we've got a manufacturers group and we've got a trades group, and we're working all about that. But with youth science as the attribute, if we're not, and this was brought up this morning, was a great point. If we're not using the ILP in middle school, high school transformation is not going to work. So why are we just focused on transformation there, not K-12? Part of, you know, the Reform Act was the primary program. It was a great program, but I would say 90% of the schools use a K program, a 1 program, a 2 program, and a 3 program, and they only use the primary as a structured report card. It's great, at least in Boone County that was, because, and I had to fight that they're not using that model. We get to middle school and we're not doing any exploration of trades that we need to, or whatever trades that we want at the end, so the kids can get vibrant learning experiences and understand and not be waiting till the 10th and 11th grade for things, but also trying to take that CTE focus off of it. And this is just vibrant learning all the way through. And it's not about transforming high schools. I know we need to transform the curriculum and we need to do scheduling there, but if we don't have middle school, we're lost. That's just my opinion.
So one comment that I would make is that this is about the work that the board is doing. And so that high school transformation is one of your big initiatives right now, right? Which is why the evidence will be clear through that committee or work group. We also heard this morning that they did start to talk about middle school and ILPs. Right. And I would like to point out that one of the things that we're doing with the commissioner's student advisory, they're very interested in the transition from high school to whatever that next thing is for them. They called it a transition to post-secondary, right? We are, along with Mickey's team and CTE, so Beth Hargis, her team, looking at proposing to them that they focus on the ILP. And because that's so important to our CTE program, they want to bring that down to the middle school level. So although it's not in here, because I don't know that it's something that the board is focused on, the department is very much focused on everything that I hear you say.
I guess that's my question. Why are we as a board not focused on the fact that if we do not put our emphasis behind the ILP, it's been around a long time and it's not being utilized. And that was the point this morning from that committee. If we don't sit there and say that we're willing to transform middle school, the high school transformation is dead on arrival. Just my opinion. I've been fighting this thing for years. It's the middle, we had to do middle school training in order to ever get the Ignite Institute off the ground. And people would say, well, you're doing all this at the middle school. Well, what are they going to do at the high school? Well, we did not have the go-ahead from Toyota at the time to announce what we were going to do at the high school. We said you had to have faith. But we started there. We didn't start at the high school transforming it. We transformed so that's the reason why there's 500 kids on a waiting list, because they don't want to go to a traditional high school.
So
Anyway, my
Randy,
thoughts.
I take your point, Lou.
Okay.
Yours is going to be the last comment
Okay,
on
I
this
see,
right now.
I see a path forward with Randy's concern, and one that I share slightly on this one, Karen, and that might be, could that fourth bullet instead be explore further opportunities for school innovation across the Commonwealth, period. And then recognize that high school transformation is the kind of next phase of Kentucky United We Learn as part of the bullet. So we get innovation in here beyond just innovation through vibrant learning experiences, because vibrant learning experiences may not, frankly, be innovative. John Dewey was right around inquiry. Maria Montessori was right, and that's not innovation. So vibrant learning and innovation, I think if we use that language instead of through innovation through vibrant learning, and then broaden that fourth bullet to include school innovation across the Commonwealth, and then note the work that's happening right now, the initiative related to high school transformation. And that doesn't disregard early childhood. It doesn't disregard literacy and numeracy in the elementary grades. It doesn't disregard middle school, for example, but it captures the slice of that goal for where we are in the fall of 25.
So I captured taking out transformation in that fourth bullet and changing it to innovation. Was there another change?
Take out high school transformation
Sorry.
and change it to school innovation.
School innovation,
And
got
then use the high school transformation as the initiative du jour that we are modeling and holding ourselves accountable for evidence of.
Okay.
The next one could be something like, what would we be doing if what we were doing made sense? I mean, it's almost like innovation is acting on what we know. Innovation is making sure that we have really high integrity professional practice. I mean, it's going to look new in some places, and those are the places where it really needs to happen. So, I mean, I don't want us to oversell innovation. We don't want to oversell vibrant learning experiences. We're trying to find the language that brings this objective to every school to benefit every student. So,
And gather the evidence
and gather
of that work.
exactly, gather the evidence of that impact. So I think, I mean, guys, we're going to struggle with this as we struggle with continuing to be accountable to these goals. Karen, I really want to thank you for being patient and hearing us. I mean, you hear us and help us come together with tools that keep us kind of true to what we say we want to get done. So
I've
thank
got
you.
a great team that helps. I also
yeah.
want to just mention that you had asked how you would track these moving forward, and I did create a spreadsheet for you to do that tracking. I believe I gave that to Glitz.
It's in the portal.
Yes,
Okay,
it's in the portal.
Perfect.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Karen. I mean,
I'm
we've
still
got No, yeah, we're going to that. I'm going to ask now the commissioner and Dr. Glufasan Jones to come and support our conversation around aligning the board's goals and the commissioner goals and the legislative priorities, which gets to the tool that Karen has developed for us.
Right, so what's being passed around right now is just for you to be able to see all of your goals fully written out on one page. Also, the next page is your legislative priorities all written out. Then the commissioner's goals written out, and finally, the department's goals are written out. Can we go to the next? There we go, thank you. And then on the last page, it looks a little different than what we have up on the screen. But this just, again, shows that full alignment of your goals, your priorities, the commissioner's goals, and the KDE goals. So go ahead to the next slide, please. So what we're recommending, and this is a conversation that the three of us have had, is in order, and I think this really addresses some of what just was part of the NASB reflection that you all did. How do you keep to what's important to the board on your agendas? So we're suggesting that we change those little check marks that are at the bottom of your staff notes and put instead what we have, so your three goals, legislation, and commissioners management. And if you look at, again, back at this, what you have in front of you here, it lines up with what we have on here. So your three goals at the top, and then the legislative priorities. And then those last two rows are really around the commissioner's management. So anything that would come to you around his goals or the department's goals would be under commissioner's management. So this is just one way that we could make sure that our team here at KDE is checking a box to make sure that what they're bringing to you is indeed part of the priorities that should be brought to the board. You can go to the next page.
Got you right back to your deliverology roots,
I
didn't
know,
it?
right?
Right.
And then we're also just recommending that we would have, just change up the PowerPoint slides a little bit. So what you're seeing here are just icons that would be at the end or at the bottom of the pages. And as an example right here, if we were talking about Kentucky United We Learn, this is around your goal of fostering education innovation through vibrant student experiences. And so you would see that at the bottom of the PowerPoint slides. The next example we had was if I were talking to you about customer surveys, that's part of our strategic plan. So commissioners management would be at the bottom of that PowerPoint slide.
So these were brought forward in support of this continued focus on emphasis on reflection during meetings for the board to intentionally reflect back. I also have brought forward for shared awareness here a reminder of the change of schedule beginning in January. You'll see noted on the slides here the scheduled dates for the board to enter into virtual regular meetings with the intention of focusing on the board's learning agenda. We have captured through suggestions and recommendations to the chair and vice chair that the January meeting will focus on the role of the board regarding state and federal funds, school funding, and then state funding, particularly a focus on support of the SEEK or the Support Education Excellence in Kentucky Funding Program. The March meeting is anticipated to focus on assessment and accountability, a focus on science. And then the May meeting we have as a focus on the outcomes of the 26th legislative session, and an opportunity for the board to use that space to think and reflect on legislative priorities. Those are the recommendations that have been brought forward so far to date to the chair and vice chair. Would encourage and remind members to share forward recommendations or requests to the chair and vice chair. Also, you'll be receiving an invitation via email from me to provide opportunities if you have questions to help focus and tailor these sessions, to provide input to our staff here at the department in advance of those meetings so we can bring forward and provide resources and information to help focus and tailor. So I would encourage you to be on the lookout for that email from me following this meeting, and invite your input again as we continue and move forward. And happy to answer any questions, but did want to bring this forward for consideration as we look forward to our 26th board meeting schedule.
Well, I just want to remind the board that one of the issues that we want to address here is making sure everybody sees what the framework is and the opportunities for engagement and the opportunities for accountability, So some of you are very actively involved in your professional communities and at the local level doing work related to these, doing work away from the table. And I do want to remind you, we want to be sure to collect those examples of evidence as well. So we have kind of a responsibility to report back. I mean, that's something, I speak to a group and speak as an individual, but representing the board's agenda, and never tell anybody. So it's like if we want to be accountable, we need to be transparent. And we need to be forthcoming with information that helps us know what's working, what might be making an impact, and what's not, if we're going to consult these data for more tactical or strategic analysis. Any comment on this? I mean, we're really trying to keep everybody on the playing field with a sense of what the strategies are and the goals, where the goalposts are. Comments?
Is that slide in our handout? Those
Yes.
dates?
Yes.
Did we get, did we get meeting, or, you know how you do the calendar invites? Do we have those ones? Were those sent
The
out?
I
January.
know we have the invite for
Taylor
the
sent those.
January
Okay,
one.
I'm just making sure.
Yeah.
Because if it's not,
I don't think we have the invite for all of them, but the January one, I remember getting.
I think Taylor sent them through
yeah, I do
June.
too, but I just want to make
Checking
sure.
right now.
Usually does.
Yes, those are shared to your.
Yeah, I think the internet may be down, friends.
I have to. Okay, other comments?
Or it's user error, Logan.
We've
Again,
come a
just
long way.
a quick comment, if I may,
Yes,
Chair Robinson.
Dr. Fletcher?
Again, just to reiterate, the beauty of, there's so many documents that we float out and we talk to people about. I think this alignment shows that whether it be the commissioners' goals, whether it be department goals, whether it be the priorities, they all align. And I think this is very important to have this, not only for the board, but also for KDE, also our legislators and things of that nature. That way, when we're bringing information to you, you can see that. Also, too, just to emphasize another point, one of the things that this board has really focused in on was the use of data. And these new virtual meetings that are going to, that will have that opportunity to dive deeper into data, but also, too, it addresses a concern that was brought up in the audit, in the APA audit. Also brings up addressing an area that was discussed just earlier when we talked about the survey of board members. So again, I want to commend the board for taking steps to take action on what's been identified with the audit and also within the survey. So again, I think it's always important to emphasize that.
So I'll just remind the board, as we have captured interest in topics, the January meeting, virtual meeting, will focus on the board's authority related to state and federal funds, school finance, and the SEEK funding formula. In March, we will focus primarily on assessment and accountability, with a special focus on on science as a discipline. And in May, we will be doing a 2026 legislative recap and a 26-28 discussion of legislative priorities. And we are open for other agenda items for the July, September, November meeting, and further consideration of matters we need to study as we use our virtual time together. Precious time. Julie.
I just want to say I appreciate doing the legislative priorities in May, because many people think the work is done, or you advocate during the session, and you really have to advocate between July and December why they're working on bills and things. So I appreciate having that in May.
It's, that's one of those we never close topics. We got to keep working all the time and making sure we're sensitive to opportunity. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Lucas. I'm hopelessly behind schedule, but we have, we're going to persevere and recognize Secretary Ling. Thank you for joining us. We're happy to have you with us virtually. Our next agenda item is our consent agenda. It is a lengthy one, but substantive. A reminder, this item requires a vote, and it consists of the consent agenda and allows for approval of these matters in one action. The KDE staff identified these items as those that are non-controversial and routine in nature. The consent agenda was distributed to members in advance. It's available in the portal. And that was done to allow you to have time for review. At this point, I want to ask if any member wishes to have any consent agenda item removed to the regular agenda as a discussion item. Yes, Dr. Todd.
I'd like to just be able to discuss the Perkins document and the authorization we're supposed to put in place for that to be passed for the year. So
That is item I. All right. Dr. Todd has asked to remove item I.
Well, H is another one too, H and I.
H and I, okay. We'll add H and I to the discussion agenda. Any others? I would now ask the board I would ask for a motion that the items in the consent agenda, except for item H and item I, be approved. Is there such a motion?
I make the motion to accept the consent agenda
Okay,
items.
Randy, is there a
exclusion of the
second?
two.
Thank you, Julie. It's been moved and seconded to approve the items in the consent agenda except for item H and I. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say no. It is done. At this time, we are going to dismiss for our committee meetings. We're scheduled to reconvene as a full board at 3:35.
And it's already 3, so.
Oh, I forgot, we're behind.
We don't need that much time in ours, so.
Let's
I don't
We
know
see.
have
about you all.
3 15-minute presentations, but I could change them to 3 10-minute presentations. Oh, okay.
And one
You'll
group's
have to
not
show me.
coming. Yeah, so I think we're good. So how about we reconvene at 3:40? So we are now dismissed to our committee meetings. The United We Learn Committee will stay here in the boardroom, and the State Schools Committee will meet in room 516. Could we come back to order, please? We still have quite a substantive agenda to address this afternoon. We would begin with the committee reports. Dr. Young, you're going to report on the United We Learn Committee.
Yes, we had two presentations in the Kentucky United We Learn Committee. The first from the Kentucky United We Learn Council for information sharing from Karen Dodd and Susan Strange. It was a really good update on where we are in late 2025 in year 3. So we got an overview of Kentucky United We Learn in year 3. And many thanks to Susan for laying out the timeline and some details there, including 600-plus participants in 9 town halls. Channeling my inner Taylor Swift, this is the Fletcher era of Kentucky United We Learn. And as a result, it's so embarrassing to be me. As a result, we are really excited about moving forward for Framework 4.0 in the upcoming session of the General Assembly. We also have 14 new members of the Kentucky United We Learn Council for a total of 67 members across the Commonwealth. Susan described their efforts, much appreciated efforts, to diversify the demographic representation of membership on the Kentucky United We Learn Council. So it was great to get an update. The next meeting is January 23rd, when we'll bring the council back together here at the department for a full day, introduce new members, new leadership, include Dr. Jim Flynn, who's now chairing, moved up from the vice chair of the Kentucky United We Learn Council to chair, and his vice chair is now Dr. Brandy Howard from Bullitt County Schools. So we're excited for that new leadership and this kind of reset, refresh version, or Fletcher era Kentucky United We Learn Council and the work ahead as we pivot toward a focus on high school transformation. And then on the front row here, you'll see our very capable team from Advanced Kentucky. Those of you who've been on the board for a while, we hear from Advanced Kentucky every year. It's always a pleasure to catch up with that team. I really want to urge you to go to the portal, and if you're on the State Schools Committee and you haven't yet had a chance to see their slide deck, look at that slide deck. It's really helpful. Randy, you would love it if you haven't already had a chance to get more details about the work. They have many initiatives, but 2 major initiatives that were highlighted today. The Computer Science Initiative includes training with provocative titles like A1 for every A1. AI, channeling the Secretary of Education. It's just reading from my notes. AI for every teacher, an online program, AI foundations training for teachers, and they also help develop the CTE pathway in additive manufacturing, which started in 2023-24 and to date has served 111 students. Next week, we learned today that the governor has declared next week Computer Science and Education in Kentucky Week, including 1 hour of AI. You may have heard of 1 hour of code, which code.org has been doing now for a decade or more. This is 1 hour of AI next week. So hopefully we'll be getting some social media, press releases, that kind of thing on how we might participate. And I would just, before I leave this computer science initiative, I made a note to myself. One of my takeaways this time is how their partnerships have really gotten so rich and so robust. So it's Advanced Kentucky and lots of partners doing this work across Kentucky. Their second big initiative is Access to Algebra, A2A, focused on improving middle school math achievement and increasing participation in 8th grade Algebra 1. Dr. Robinson and I have been chatting about a new report about how important Algebra 1 is to a path for students, all students, to advance coursework at secondary and post-secondary. So that's critically important, and their efforts to ensure that a diverse student population is benefiting from that are commendable. They also, because of numeracy count funding, they were able to double the number of students and teachers supported through Access to Algebra this year. No, it was 23, it was 23, 24, 25, this past year. And I think that's it. But please take a look at the slide deck, tons of information, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, and you haven't heard the last about 8th grade
I told you.
access to algebra.
Listen.
Okay, I mean,
Listen. Yeah.
okay.
More to come.
Same.
Okay.
Randy?
Since my group's not on the front row, I'd like you to stand so the rest of the board can see you.
Absolutely.
KD Director Jarrett Mills and KSD Dr. Lynn Petrie, who's the principal there, and our Director Shannon Sparkman. So they did a great job with the presentation that they gave us. And we just we went over from the project goals with KDE to improve literacy for deaf students and provide transferable skills and facilitate network and collaboration are some of the major goals. So we also received a great presentation on the historical aspect. And one of the things that I learned from there is that KSD had a printing press from 1874 to 2004 where they distributed information, print media for the deaf for all over the country. And then it was called the Kentucky Standard. And currently now what they've done is they, like others out there, because the digital media has taken over, so they've currently went from print to digital media like others have. And today, from 2013 to now, Deaf TV, Sign News, Deaf Nation, and DPAN. And what's really interesting is several students from the Kentucky School for the Deaf actually are work in those particular areas, so that is awesome. And one thing that I did not know, there's deaf music and a rap music out there and deaf poetry, and once again, our KSD students are involved in that. Deaf Videography Camp 2018. Once again, we have a 2018 grad that was working in that area. Video of Rocky Mountain School for the Deaf. Most deaf students I did not understand, or once again, information I did not know. Most deaf students are born with hearing parents, but only 30% of those hearing parents learn sign language. So that creates a literacy problem, and that's what we're addressing there. So the progression of KSD resources from 2017 to 2019, and there's 20 minutes of video as we ask all our students, or school districts did, for parents to read with their children 20 minutes a night. For the KSD students, it's 20 minutes of video of supplemental reading. And that is what fills the gap for the 1.8 million students out there that are reading at 20 minutes. So our KSD asked for 20 minutes of that videography for our students. This upgrade was brought on by ARP money, and one of the great things that we were able to see demonstration of is the broadcast studio. So the broadcast studio leads to post-secondary pathways in this particular area for any students that want to major in video broadcasting. First, we also had the first the first English ASL sports broadcast in collaboration with Boyd County Sports Network. So that was awesome to see that on the horizon. So once again, a collaboration model with other students. One of the additional things is the announcements there because of this upgrade in the video. One of the things that we think about there is that safety. So the alert system takes over all screens within KSD if there is an emergency situation. So if a student is not looking down, we take for granted that we're seeing strobe lights go off and other things, but in there, it takes over all the screens. So whether they're working on a computer screen or looking down, whatever screen it takes over. So accessibility is a particular issue there. So the presentation materials, they also created a presentation lab area where they do PD, community announcements, and they also work with other schools across the nation and communicate through those. They gave several examples of collaborations with several different schools and so forth, and then additional goals that they're going to be working on. So was very pleased with the report and the upgrade of services at KSD. because once again, we are a board that works with them, and the commissioner is the district superintendent of KSD. So very proud of the work that you're doing there, and all our staff members. A tribute to them that, you know, things that we take for granted in the hard work that they're doing, and the principal who's doing there, and the director of technology. Just fascinating to see that work. So, and thanks for Greta and her department for providing us with that update. So it was great. It was great to see.
Thank you, Dr. Poe. There's no action coming out of the United We Learn Committee and the State Schools Committee, but I have to tell you, my heart was just really inspired by the efforts to bring kind of modern pathways to our students attending KSD, and it was delightful to see. And I want us to be well prepared to advocate for all that they need to continue this work as a part of our advocacy efforts coming up shortly. Board members, I would like for us to return to the items we withheld from the consent agenda. And Dr. Hargis, if you wouldn't mind coming to the table, I'm going to begin by asking Dr. Todd to give us a further explication of some of the issues that and questions arise from his seeking to withhold items H and I. They're different items, but Beth, we wanted to make sure you and your folks could elaborate on and address any questions, if you don't mind. Dr. Todd, I return to you.
H was very quick. You gave a list of the dollars for the different categories, but you didn't say how much of a raise that was to the prior year. So there's a requirement that you set those minimum salary standards each year.
We do.
Are they increases over last year? And does that come through Perkins, or does that come through the state?
No, it comes through the state.
Okay. But is there any regulation that we have to do the same thing for teachers in the public school system every year?
No, sir. These are 156 instructors, and so they're very unique to the state of Kentucky. They're in our area technology centers. And so when it's the board's responsibility to approve or to set the salary schedule. So under the regulation, we are required to, when we are figuring out where it needs to be, we are comparing it to all of the local district salaries across the state. So we've actually felt like when you're comparing it to the local districts, we're in a pretty good point. We're about in the middle ways. You know, if you were to rank them in order, the area tech centers, this salary schedule is about in the middle. Now, that's on the front end of it. So when someone comes to work, you know, there's basically a 50% chance they're going to be making more than the local district or less than the local district. We do, and so what we did is we increased it 3% because July 1st of 25, that was the state increase that all state employees received. And so that way it keeps them aligned with what everyone else is making that's already in there. And so this is retroactive to July 1. So if someone were hired June 30th, then they got the 3% increase. But if they came on July 2nd, they didn't get it. So this will allow us to go back and give them that 3% bump so that we're equitable across the board.
Okay. But the thing that, what really impressed me, I'll move on to the next one now. We talk about disaggregated data. You got a rich set of disaggregated data. I mean, they have it in scores and career decisions that kids are making based on their ethnicity, on special populations, all the way down to home ones who are not in the normal population. And they've got these, I don't know how many categories you have in that special group or not, but 9 is it. Then they have the scores for those. They have the careers that they all teach, or that they choose. And when I look at the one particular thing was the post-program placement, which I assume it says that they've been through high school. When you say post-program, what does that mean?
And
Post-program,
this is Lori Looney. Lori is our Perkins coordinator within the office.
so post-program placement can mean a variety of things. It can mean transition to employment, transition to post-secondary, transition to military, or transition to volunteer service.
Okay. Well, I noticed that under employment, and I think, all I'm saying is I think we need a full presentation on the trends, what's working, what's not working, what are you seeing happen within this population. We're putting a lot of emphasis on CT right now. And I think it's an important thing that industry needs to understand what's happening. But when I look at the attained recognized post-secondary credential, and what does that mean? Because 63% of your students out of 20,999, I'm sorry, the population was 33,489. 63% of those attained a recognized post-secondary credential. What does that mean?
Okay, so that's the Perkins Indicator 5S1, and 5S1 counts a concentrator who has earned an industry certification and passed an end-of-program assessment or completed an apprenticeship. And so the goal for Kentucky, for the cycle you're looking at for the consolidated annual report, was 59.35%, but we exceeded that goal by earning 63%, roughly a 4%, exceeding the goal by 4%.
I think that's, if you continue to look at the breakdown of that data, 51% of those pursued baccalaureate degrees, 30% went after associate degrees, and there's only 3% that went after certificates. I'm not sure what that means. It says 706 students out of 31,000 went after certificates.
Do you know exactly which page of the report?
My internet connection died somewhere along the line.
Yeah,
but
we're all having internet access
with that.
issues,
It was in
sorry.
one of it was under the attained recognized post-secondary credential after the scores for the science and the math and it's a table after that.
5S1 is on page 22, but that doesn't have the specific data points that Lee's talking about.
And I think, now, Lori, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what it's talking about is because it's, it's asking how many of them received an associate's degree, how many of them received a bachelor's degree or a certificate. And so quite often students will go on to post-secondary and they may be in not a degreed program, but a certificate program. And so I think that's what it's referencing.
Okay. I think under this one, 28% were employed, which was out of that group, which is
And I will
interesting.
say that the placement data is very difficult to get.
That's right.
We get that from KY Stats.
Yeah.
They're the ones that actually report to us. And so, it's hard. You lose track of some of those students. And so the districts are the ones that are collecting that and then report it. And, sometimes it's simply hearsay. I heard that, this student joined the military. And so.
Is that the same data that guidance counselors collect in October of each year on the prior year's graduates? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So I think bottom line is I looked at it, I had a lot of questions because it's just a kind of a piece of paper with a lot of numbers on it. But I think I'm glad you can get that kind of data because I know when I used to teach students at university, you never knew what they went to work and where they left or until they had kids and came back and brought them back to school, which is kind of fun. But anyway, I appreciate the work you do, but it's such an important part of our whole workforce situation. And when I saw the 706 certificates, it bothered me because I think we get credentials and certificates mixed up.
Yes.
Because some people think you go to high school, you take dual credit, you get out of high school, you got a credential, you'll get a job. And I'm not sure if that's working that well or not. But that's really what I'd like to know, the workforce cabinet. Is that part of the system really working? Are we making, if not, what do we need to do to make it work as advertised?
And I think you're exactly right. One of the things that we are currently doing, and I gave you the paper. We have a data analysis report that is on our website. I'm sorry I wasn't able to pull all of it up, but it's our CTE annual report. And so going forward, what we want to do is to provide to the public so that it's forward-facing our trends, because that's going to show
That would
whether
be
we're
really
successful or
helpful.
not. Yes. and
Yeah, it's so hard to see it isolated year by year, even in the
Yes.
state schools committee. So, yeah, I think that's what we're looking
That'd be
for.
super.
So I provided just a snapshot on paper,
that's helpful
but
too.
again, that's where we're moving. And then we do have a lot of other initiatives going on right now, because I think you're right. We do, it's not just to say that you're CTE and everyone knows that we're doing a good job. We need to be able to show that. And I think you're right that the placement data plays a significant role in that. And so that is something that we are looking at and trying to make sure that we are getting the data, to the best that we're able to, just because of the complexity. But going forward, we will have that. And also in February, we will be presenting all of this to you as we normally do for the CTE month. And we will have a lot of data for you to review.
Good, yeah. Did you have something you want to say?
I was just going to add, speaking of, trends, the information that you're seeing in the consolidated annual report reflects our new performance model. So we're under a new 4-year cycle for performance, and that was set up based on an average of our actual performance from the 2 previous years. All that to say the COVID era goals are concluded, and now these are far more challenging goals for us to accomplish. And we were within the federal standard for reaching 90% of every single goal we had.
Yeah, okay, all right. Thank
So,
you.
board members, we do need to take action on items I and H and approve them now that we have discussed them. I would like to first entertain a motion, ask the board for a motion to approve items I and H
So
from
moved.
the consent agenda.
I'll move that.
Dr. Todd moves approval.
Second.
Thank you. So all those in favor of approving items I, the salary schedule,
H.
and H,
H is the salary schedule.
the Perkins report, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Now, the next thing I want to say as we look forward to February is to note the growing interest of finding the right measures for impact in CTE and finding the right methods for collecting such evidence in a reliable way. There's growing interest there. I'm seeing it just in my casual awareness of the literature. There is growing analysis regarding this and the impact of certificates in areas where students actually can find work and all of the, so we need to be ready to be well-informed advocates on behalf of our students in programs that really improve their lives. So, we see it, you see it, and I want us all to be ready for the question when it comes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Please, let's return to our regular agenda under action discussion items, item C, and welcome to the table, Dr. Greta Hilton, Division Director Carol Ann Morrison, and Policy Advisor Melody Cooper to present proposed amendments to 2 regulations, 707 KAR 1002 definitions and 707 1350 placement decisions.
Thank you, Chair. So as you mentioned, we have 2 regulations in front of you for consideration for amendments. The first one specifically pertains to definitions for special education, and we're going to specifically talk about the caseload and class size for students with disabilities. And that's going to tie directly into the second regulation, the 707 KAR 1350, which establishes the requirements for making placement decisions for students with disabilities. And I'm going to turn it over to Director Carol Ann Morrison to go through the specific changes with you.
Thank you. I'm going to walk through each of these changes and just kind of, it will be on the screen if you want to follow along as well. The first one is on page 3, line 16, We're removing 4 special classes to clarify caseload and when we're defining caseload, and then adding overseeing the management of. So we've just updated that definition there for caseload. On page 4, line 12, we're removing the definition of class size for resource classes because we are adding a new definition for special class to make the definitions and regulations easier to interpret and implement. Then on down a little bit on page 4, line 15, this is just a cleanup to language to change specifically designed to specially designed instruction. Page 5, lines 3 and 5, we're adding the words or her so that it will now read his or her. Before it just said his. And then on page 11, line 16, we're adding the definition of paraprofessional, and we're just referring to the administrative regulation where that is already defined. Page 12, line 20, we're clarifying parentally placed private school children to align with the federal language. Page 15, line 3, we're adding a definition for special class to make the regulations easier to interpret and implement. And special classes will have maximum class sizes that I'll talk about in a minute with the next regulation update. And then page 15, line 9, it's just a little bit of cleanup to remove the hyphen from specially designed instruction to align with federal language and current usage. And then updating the citation for the Kentucky academic standards. So that's all of the changes with the first one. Do you want me to pause there, Chair, or would you like me to go on to the next one?
Let's pause. Are there any questions regarding the definitions? Let's go to placement decisions.
Okay, sure. So for placement decisions, page 1, line 14, we're adding a reference to the Kentucky Revised Statute 157.360, which requires the Commissioner of Education to enforce special education maximum class sizes that are set by administrative regulations adopted by the Kentucky Board of Education. On page 3, line 13, we're providing clarity for implementation in a few ways there by removing the previous limits set as maximum class sizes for resource classes. If you'll note the definitions, we removed this definition. And we're adding maximum class sizes for special classes, which is now defined in our definitions. And then adding language on how to determine the maximum class size when students from more than one disability category are in a special class. And then to relieve districts of the burden of submitting waiver requests, we have amended the regulation to reflect the numbers that we previously approved through this process. And this will not impede a district from seeking a waiver under 707 KAR 5170, given that the district can demonstrate the waiver will improve the operation of the school without hindering student academic achievement, or that it will improve student academic achievement at the school while continuing to meet all of the federal requirements. And then on page 4, line 24, we're removing the reference to resource classes. Page 5, lines 1 through 6, these 2 subsections are just being moved to from section 2 to section 3. And then page 5, lines 7 through 22, we're updating the section title to reflect caseload for special classes and not caseload for resource teachers anymore. And we're using numbers that would have been approved through the previous waiver process. And we established maximum caseloads for teachers of special classes in section 3. And then page 6, for lines 1 through 9, we're adding clarification regarding how to determine maximum caseload when a teacher of special classes are assigned student records from more than one disability category, how to determine maximum caseload when teachers provide services solely through collaboration, and how to determine the maximum caseload when services are provided by the teacher through a combination of collaboration and special classes. And then for section 4, We add section 4 citing 157.360 as authorizing superintendents or local school councils to request a waiver relating to maximum class size for special classes.
Thank you so much. I would, just as a reminder for our board members, you have a letter from Chair Kurt Bickerstaff, the chair of the Local Superintendent's Advisory Council. The LSAC did consider these regulations and these amendments and approve them. And so now I would ask if there are any further questions. Then I would ask the board to, for a motion to approve the amendments to 707 KAR 1002 definitions and 707 KAR 1350 placement decisions. May I have such a motion?
I make the motion.
Dr. Poe, is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Steve. All those in favor of approving these amendments, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposition? Thank you so much. The motion carries. Next, we will welcome KDE Associate Commissioner Meredith Baxter, Division Director Todd Davis, and Policy Advisor Cassie Trublet to present a proposed amendment to 704 KAR 3370 Kentucky Framework for Personnel Evaluation. Thank
Good
you.
afternoon.
afternoon.
We have for you a very minor amendment. In fact, we brought more staff members than words in the amendment. So in alignment with House Bill 48, which made some changes to the evaluation cycle, we are proposing moving from 3 years to 5 years for summative evaluations.
I'm going to ask the board if you have questions or issues. This has been thoroughly studied, and the matter is before you. I would ask the board to entertain a motion to approve the amendment to 704 KAR 3370 Kentucky Framework for Personnel Evaluation. Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Great. I will call the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition, say no. The motion carries. Thank you so much.
We really wanted more discussion about the difference between 3 and 5.
I think the impact, though, is pretty clear for tenured teachers. We now welcome KDE Associate Commissioner Matt Ross. We can't have a meeting without Matt and Che, the policy advisor, and policy advisor Lindsay Swartz, to present the proposed amendment to 702 KAR 3130 internal accounting.
I'm glad Matt wore his green tie that represents Mr. Grinch.
Right, that's right. Tis the
Green for
season.
money.
Oh, green for money.
For the record, OFO did pay the internet bill, so it's not us. It's not us.
Can't prove it by us.
That's right. So today we have for you proposed amendments to 702-3130. It's titled Internal Accounting. So what does that mean? It's really the it establishes the uniform procedures for accounting of school activity funds. It does this through a document called Accounting Procedure, incorporating by reference a document called Accounting Procedures for Kentucky School Activity Funds. It's also commonly known as the Red Book, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. But what is a school activity fund? It means all school funds, including funds derived from fundraising activities, sponsored under the auspices of the school, and does not mean funds raised or received by organizations that do not come under the direct supervision of school authorities. So we last did this, I think, in 2019. And since that time, there's been some changes to technology. There's some need for some cleanup of this regulation and the document incorporated by reference. I'll let Steve sort of describe the process and some of the major changes. So Steve, if you don't care to sort of explain how this all happened and what we did.
All right. So we convened a group of finance officers. I think there's 5 or 6 finance officers, an auditor, and a Red Book trainer in the state. And we came together talking about what we had learned and what we discovered over the past 6 years on things that changed as far as technology, as Matt mentioned, and other things as well. So we all received, and especially myself, received lots of emails on, I wish this happened, or I wish we could do that, or why can't we do this or that? And so we met a couple of times and exchanged hundreds of emails probably to get to where we are today. And then, of course, with Lindsay's oversight of language and things like that. So I've got a list of 31, but I won't go over all 31 of the changes.
You should have those in your packet.
We do.
Yeah.
But I will highlight 4 or 5, and the first 3 actually are due to technology. So the first one is on page 10 of the new iteration of Red Book, and what we did was differentiate between electronic ticketing, like at sporting events or a play or a pageant or something like that at a school, electronic tickets versus paper tickets. And so the 2019 version and prior all dealt with paper ticketing. Well, times have changed, and a lot of times you can just take your phone up now at one of these events, show a QR code, and they'll scan it, and that's your ticket, and you get admitted. And so we just developed some language to well, not really allow because it was already happening, but to incorporate it in the Red Book because it was not in there before. So that was the first major thing. Another one is, it's been going on for a while. It's a program called Arbiter Pay, and this allows school districts, Arbiter Pay is actually a third-party vendor, but what they do is, like school officials, umpires, referees, and those kind of things. In the past, schools would directly cut checks to those folks for performing duties. Well, now Arbiter Pay, for a small fee, I'm sure, but they charge school districts to do that for them. And so what an additional thing that does is it takes 1099's creation, 1099 miscellaneous creations out of responsibility of a school district or a school and puts it in Arbiter Pay. And so for the fee, they're getting the ability to just pay through Arbiter Pay. Another item is a district cannot accept donated items, or they can accept donated items from a booster club. So the current Red Book says that, if the booster club buys something, and the example I gave to LSAC was like a semi-trailer to carry band equipment around for performances and things like that. And the district is responsible for any maintenance or upkeep on that because anything donated by a booster club becomes property of the district. Well, we've added language so that, yes, the district, if they accept an item from a booster club, the district will pay the maintenance on it. But if the booster club maintains possession, then they take care of the maintenance. And so I've had countless emails asking that very question. It's like, my booster club bought this equipment. We gave it to the district, but they won't fix it. So this kind of alleviates that issue that they might have.
So, as I recall, the letter from LSAC suggested to me a pretty thoroughgoing review because it impacts practice in such an, kind of an intimate way, high-impact way. Am I correct in the conclusion that LSAC was pretty comfortable with the changes that are being suggested?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, this sounds like a pretty thoroughgoing review to me. Am I correct in that?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, and like Steve said, historically, in 2019, the changes were made, I think, that were more substantial.
They were.
And you'll probably, in the life cycle, every 5 or so years, we'll do this again. And there may be some new technology, the way money's moved around. Most of it's to keep some tight accounting rules
Yeah.
and not to allow a group or an individual, for example, to push money one direction or another without some oversight. And just like, I know back in the day, Venmo wasn't a thing. Now it is.
Right.
And QR codes.
Right.
Paper tickets is what you had. So things like that, as they change over time, we just have to keep up with. Gratefully, it's, like I said, every 4 or 5 years. It's not very often, so.
So this is an important tool, so let me just make sure the board members, let me see what their questions are. Julie?
Okay, so I kind of gave you a heads up on this, but I actually served as an interim financial secretary in a middle school, so I know Red Book inside out. I've actually read it. But some things I want just kind of clarified and out there so people understand this. So, and I asked you guys this before. Parent organizations boosters. My understanding was PTAs could charge membership dues because those dues pass on up, but only if they were approved by the local school board on this fee schedule. But PTOs and booster organizations could not choose those. Is that still correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And
great.
actually, that was added in the 2019 version, that those organizations could not collect dues or fees or don't, they couldn't ask for payments.
And one of the changes is about, or one of the statements is about individuals cannot use Venmo type things. Can PTAs and parent organizations and boosters use Venmo and PayPal's set up as an organization account?
As an organization account, yes. So
Organization.
the language we put in there was individuals, they can't have a Venmo, like my Venmo account. I can't use it to collect money for a school booster organization. It has to be a business account, yes.
So if a member of an organization is manning the door, the organization does not have a corporate account set up, that individual cannot take the money. They still
Correct.
need to follow the normal red book of cash check, filling forms out. Okay. I just want this on record stated out there because I see things happening and I think it's important. On the crowdfunding, crowdsourcing as fundraisers, normal procedures would be for the organization to request, like put in a fundraiser request form to the district office. That still needs to be followed, correct?
Right.
Because I can see people saying that's an open door policy and they can just go set up donor choose where they still need to follow the fundraiser policy on that. My last question is on the items that are not then taken over ownership by the district, who's responsible for the insurance policies on that and what are the regulations or rules on what they have as far as amounts, total coverage amounts and per occurrence amounts and stuff? Where can that information be found?
Each external booster organization is required to have insurance. And so, we don't delve into insurance in Red Book other than that they have to have it. So there's not a limit, there's not a low limit or a maximum amount that we put in there. But now if the district were to take possession of a donated item from a booster, then it would be the district's insurance that would cover that.
Okay.
And mine, when we amended in 2019, I remember there was a pretty big concerted effort to ensure training across the field from the time that the new Red Book was approved until that next July 1. So what are you thinking about in terms of training? Because there's a lot of coaches and boosters and athletic directors and assistant principals, et cetera. What's that going to look like?
Well, we typically have a finance officer auditor workshop in the spring. And so that's probably going to be our first big opportunity to share, even though probably at that time it'll still be in draft version or draft
going
mode.
through the process.
But we can at least give them a heads up on what's coming out in the new version.
I remember 2019, because I teach it in classes, was August 1. When do we think this one will be in
That's our
effect?
hope. That's our
August
goal
1?
for this
Okay.
one too.
So it depends on how soon it gets through the process, right? So it's built in that the old will be effective until either that date or
Or-
it
okay.
actually becomes effective.
Okay.
So, board members, your approval is timely, and it seems that these amendments are also timely. So I would ask the board to entertain a motion to approve the amendment to 702 KAR 3130, internal auditing. May I have such a motion?
So moved.
Julie, is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Steve. Further discussion or questions? Then I'll call the question. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, board members, this has been a really productive meeting, a substantive day, a full day. I thank you for your attention to all the matters that came before us. And so at this time, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
So moved.
Is
And I
there a
would second it
All right.
and note that today is Todd G. Allen's birthday.
All right. All in
Todd
favor of
Allen.
adjourning on Todd's birthday so we can go celebrate, please say aye. Any opposed?
Let's celebrate that.
No, any opposed? We are adjourned.
Happy
I will
birthday,
see you
Todd.
in the
Happy
morning at
birthday
9 o'clock.
to